So you guys all are fearful of going to real estate jail? Has anybody sat in one of my classes before? No, really? Got all newbies, huh? So I can tell whatever story I want. All right, so here's what I do for my classes. Hopefully to make it enjoyable and more fun. Is well, let me back up. I'm a real estate broker defense attorney, which means I do what for a living? Who do I defend? I defend real estate agents. Been doing it for 20 years. I represent my home group. I represent most of the large brokerages here in the state. And because of that, I've had the pleasure of going to many, many trials where I've defended people in front of juries, your peers. And it's a heck of a lot more fun and useful to go through this process of trying to learn today if I tell you some more stories. And what I typically do is I'll give you a fact pattern from one of my real life trials, and then I'll let you guys sit as a jury real quick and tell me who wins and loses and all that kind of stuff. And then we'll learn some stuff, and it'll go by really quick. You'll be like, wow, that was an hour? That was the best hour class I ever did. We in agreement?
Sure.
So yes, because you have no choice. Well, I guess you do, you can leave. All right, so let me tell you, this is one of my favorite stories, one of my favorite trials. At some point I'm going to need a pen. I have another one. So, it's a real estate agent who specialized actually in vacant land. And what he really did is he would work with spec home builders, go find a piece of dirt, and then the spec home builder would buy the dirt, build a house, and sell it. And so the real estate agent would get two deals out of it, right? Get the vacant land deal and would also get the spec home deal. And he got to be pretty well known up in the Carefree Cave Creek area and was doing a whole bunch of these transactions. And in fact, he ended up having a relationship with this one spec home builder where they probably did a dozen transactions over several years, especially in the early 2000s. Now, in the early 2000s, how was our real estate market? Was anybody practicing in the early 2000s? Anybody? Really? The story's getting old. Well, in the early 2000s, they were making more money than God. Right? That's when the market was going, through the roof. And these guys became pretty good friends too, and their wives and stuff, and they would hang out. Well, one day, the real estate agent gets a call from the spec home builder and says, hey, I'm ready to do another project, but this one's a special project because this particular project, I'm going to go ahead and build a house, but it's going to be my dream house. So I'll use it as a marketing piece, but this is not going to be for a flip. If you know of any lots out there, you know the areas I like, so forth and so on. He said, you know what I do? There's this subdivision that a developer subdivided 60 lots and then just sold the lots, never built anything on it. But a lot of people that bought the lots are now flipping them. And it's located in Cave Creek, and it's right up against the beautiful mountains. I think you'll love it. Great, let's go. So they walk the lot, and as they're walking the lot, question comes, because the buyer / builder loves this lot, and he really loves the views, because there's this vast area of state land back there. And here's a question. The question is, hey, this is awesome, this is beautiful, I think I'm going to put an offer on it. Do you think anything can happen to this land behind this subdivision and behind this parcel I'm interested in? Important question? Now that question, when we were sitting in a 5-day jury trial, had two different versions of the answer. The version that the real estate agent gave and the version that this buyer builder gave. These are my favorite questions and conversations. Why?
He said she said.
I know. That's how I put my kids through the Harvard of the West ASU. I will tell the jokes whether you laugh at them or not. Are you with me? Okay, gotcha. Anyways, so let me back up. So the buyer builder says he asked that question, and the agent says, well, nothing. This is state land, and they can't do anything with the state land. This is all reserved, so forth and so on. According to the agent, he didn't say that at all. He said, I have no idea. State land, I guess I could do anything. You, buyer builder, should go find out if anything's going to go on. At a minimum, you're going to go down to the town of Cave Creek and pull building envelopes and all that. Ask them if they know anything. All right, into the conversation. They go, and they put an offer in on the lot. In come the vacant land spuds. Anybody do vacant land here? No? Yes?
No, but I did work for a home builder.
Okay. Did you do vacant land too?
Mm.
Okay, so you're familiar with vacant land spuds?
No.
Okay. So the vacant land spuds come in. And the vacant land spuds have a very specific question. And that question says something to the nature of, is this vacant parcel located in a subdivision? And there's a yes or no. And if you answer yes, do you know what it says needs to be included with it?
The CC&Rs and
Close.
public work.
There you go. So, did you
What
get
has to
that?
be included?
If it's located in the subdivision, the vacant land spuds say you have to attach the public report. Well, here comes the vacant land spuds in this transaction, no public report is attached. And nobody goes and gets a public report. Nobody asks for the public report, nobody on the listing side, so forth and so on, gets a public report. And the transaction closes. Now, I should back up. The listing agent in this transaction also did something that was very interesting. He advertised that he was this particular subdivision's specialist because he had done about 4 or 5 deals in there. So he said, hire me, I'm ABCD subdivision specialist. It was on his flyers and his materials, okay? This would be super important in a minute. So, this is going to be the America's Got Talent portion of my show. This is why I needed this. This is where it gets really interesting. How many deals have they done prior to this? We did about 10 together. Okay. I want you to hold on to this, but I don't want you to look at it. Okay. This is my system. It's getting good. All right.
Attorneys/magician.
That's I'm telling you. I'm going to do something really cool here in a second. So, anyways, they get done building their house. They build a 2-story house. They take advantage of all the views. Their master bedroom has basically windows from ceiling to floor to take advantage of the state land and the mountains and so forth and so on. And they're living there for about 2 weeks. And Mrs. Buyer Builder standing in her dream house, looking at these views, and in the distance, she sees something. She sees a yellow vehicle. Matter of fact, she sees a bunch of yellow vehicles with big, giant tires on it. They are what?
Bulldozer.
Okay, they're bulldozers. And what she sees is they keep driving towards her. And they end up parking right outside of her fence line. Now, they're there to do something. Now, here's where we're going to get to the fun part. I'm going to ask you, I don't want to know yet, I'm going to ask you, what is the worst thing that could be built behind your $2 million house? Don't answer yet. I have written down what is not the actual true answer, but it's one I get every time I tell the story, and I think it's hilarious. And you'll know why in a second. All right. What is the worst thing that could be built behind your $2 million house?
Waste treatment.
Sewer treatment plant.
$100,000 house.
Nuclear waste.
School.
Apartments.
I haven't got it yet.
Casino.
I haven't. No, I've gotten the real answer. Somebody got the real answer. I haven't got the answer that I normally get in here. Anything else? Any other crummy thing you can think of? What's that?
Does that say fun?
A prison.
No. I can't believe it. I didn't get it. Maybe we don't have enough people. Typically, I've probably told this story, I bet, 500 times. I always get it.
10-story building.
There's a hit.
You shop there.
Hallmark.
What did I write down? I always get Walmart. Matter of fact, it's usually one of the first things I get. When I say, what's the worst thing you can build behind a $2 million house? One of the first answers I get is Walmart. The reason I think it's funny is the actual answer is,
Sewer treatment plant.
yeah, sewer treatment facility. So I think it's funny that people equate Walmart to a shit factory. Come on, that was a good one. So much better with your, what, are you guys tired from lunch? All right, so what happened is the town of Cave Creek had acquired from the state of Arizona a parcel of land right outside of this subdivision and right behind these people's now new $2 million house.
On what was supposed to be government property.
Well, it was state land, but the town of Cave Creek bought it from the state of Arizona. And just, this is how this works, right? I can tell you the cases that go to trial are always the craziest cases. They closed on their transaction while we were in escrow. So the state of Arizona sold this parcel while we were in escrow. Now, they acquired it to build a waste treatment facility. And what was interesting about it is you can't just do that, right? You can't just do that without putting that out to the public and so forth and making sure people know we're going to use money to do that. So they had, and they complied with the various notice requirements to the citizens in the town of Cave Creek. But they would say things like, hey, come to the city meeting, city hall meeting, town meeting to discuss plans for the water ranch. What did people think the water ranch was?
Water park or something.
They thought it was a water park. Could you imagine the kids floating around in this water park here? So anyways, they got approval and they bought it. And they were building a waste treatment facility. Now, a couple things, and then I'm going to break you into juries. Why did I spend so much time on the public report? I spent so much time on the public report because the public report, the developer did have wind that the state of Arizona and the town of Cave Creek were considering this transaction. So in the public report, I said, hey, just so you know, right outside of our fence line is the future home of a waste treatment facility. It was in the public report. That was not attached, and that nobody went to go get it. Buyer didn't ask for it, buyer's agent didn't go get it, listing agent didn't provide it.
Shouldn't title have been involved in that?
In public reports? No. Now, let me keep going. A couple things now. So what ends up happening is they now have a waste treatment facility behind their house, and they say that decreased the value of their house by $1 million. And they're mad. So who do they sue? Who do they sue? Say it louder.
Everybody.
Absolutely. They always sue everybody. So they sued the buyer's agent. And they sued the buyer's agent for two reasons. One is they said that the buyer's agent misled them as to what could be happening. You know, that he said, she said conversation. But they also said they should have got the home inspection report, or the public report. They sued the seller. Now, the seller did get the public report. When did the seller get the public report? Anybody want to guess? No, when they bought the lot. Remember, this is a resale. Developer developed it and sold the lot. Sold the lot to other people. And this, the first person that buys it, did they get a public report? Anybody do vacant? You do vacant land, right? So the first time a parcel is ever sold, the developer is required by law to give a public report to the first buyer. And the buyer is required to sign a piece of paper saying, I've read it. Now, at trial, what did they say? They're now the sellers. What did they say? They said they got it. They just said what? They didn't read it. So they didn't see it. Okay. So they sued the seller saying, well, I don't care. You signed a piece of paper saying you read it. You own the lot. You should have disclosed this. And then they sued the listing agent. Now, what did I say earlier about the listing agent? How did the listing agent advertise?
Said he was the expert.
Said they were the expert in that subdivision. What the listing agent testified to as to their knowledge of this $2 million project.
He didn't know anything about
Or this multi-million project. Said I didn't know anything about it. Okay? So, those are your parties. Now, Arizona is what we call a comparative fault state. And what that means is when a jury gets a hold of something like this, they look at everyone involved and they try to figure out who's most responsible and how are they most responsible. And the only thing they got to do, it's like a pie. They're just going to come up with 100%, but they can divide it up any way they want. So how many parties do we have here? We have 4, because who else gets to be looked at? The buyer, right? Because does the buyer have due diligence requirements? Does the buyer is this buyer sophisticated? The more sophisticated than the average person?
Over $2 million house, yeah.
Yeah, and is a spec home builder, right? So they can look at the buyer, they can look at both agents, and they can look at the seller, and they can allocate fault. They just have to come 100%. They could do 25-25, they could do 33-33, whatever. They could do 10-5, but they have to come with 100%. That's your job. I'm going to break you into jury, and as a jury, you need to allocate fault up to 100%. Now, because we're here to think about real estate agents, obviously, think about what these real estate agents did or didn't do, and if you think that they fell below the standard of care, and if so, allocate them whatever fault you think is appropriate, okay? But make sure you do your math. I'll bust your chops if you don't get to 100%. So what I'm going to do then, I'm going to have you just go back here. You guys can be a jury, and you can be a jury. You kind of came in late, but they'll fill you in on the facts, okay? Cool? You can be the foreperson. It was a joke. All right, just take a few minutes, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about it.
Yeah, maybe one more said fault. The builder.
The listing, yeah. The listing agent, buyer's agent, the seller,
And the realtor should know that the
the
public
developer.
reports are
I think the developer should have a 50% because of his knowledge, because of his
sellers, agent,
The buyer's agent.
I mean, it's almost like 50-50. The buyer's
Who do you
knowledge.
think, yeah, who do you think is most at fault?
I think it's the buyer, only because I just went through this stupid
Yeah.
contract.
Let's see the buyer
advisory.
After
We
you're
don't
building a
questions,
house.
and you have to do
You're talking about a well-qualified person, if you knows.
Is there a buyer advisory involved in
He
like?
would know who to talk with.
Exactly, even know the process.
I mean, if
Isn't
there
it kind
is,
of a
And the
general
seller's saying
yeah, I
they
mean,
had
if there is, I would
buyer
say that.
advisory government?
that they had it, they didn't pass it along. So if they chose not to read it, they still should pass it along, and that person now should to read it.
Yeah, I think it's on the
I
buyer.
mean, if it was agent,
I go 50-50.
he's the expert, right?
So I voted on the buyer, 100%.
Okay,
Like
so-
for my situation too, the listing agent didn't put his funds, or didn't attach them away, or whatever. And she, so my friend's a broker, and she's like,
The guy that
tell them you're not paying, they're gonna have to pay the HOA transfer fees because they didn't attach it, so. You know,
Because, you know what?
It's still not the listing agent's fault, or the seller's fault, it's still the buyer.
I asked him a question. So if he didn't know the answer, he would say, no, my
I think there's some negligence.
I'm find out.
I don't think it's their
You need to go.
the sole responsibility.
We don't
I think if
know.
anything,
We
it's
don't
the
know.
buyer and the seller to go.
And the buyer's agent,
And the buyer's agent's a little bit of fault.
particular buyer
They should
would
know the
also
process and know that they're
know
supposed to be the
So now
document
we're
that's
formally,
part of
as
the
now we're
course.
trying to.
So maybe both realtors are,
Because he said
you
he
know,
did that.
10 and 10 and the rest is 80 on the buyer, it's all on the buyer.
Just
Yeah, I think
me,
it's the
I
buyer.
would be an expert in the area.
I think he's got
I said,
some.
yeah, that's a really good question.
I think I could see the listing agent too, should take half of that, because they should have money set fine to attach public report. Or
It's on the
listing agent
checklist.
should
Yeah,
attach public
it's
report.
definitely on the checklist.
If the, even if
Alright,
the
so
seller.
what the percentages then?
Yeah, did you say the public report is required?
Everybody?
I thought they said
It said in the vacant lands budget, it says if it's located in a subdivision,
You know.
you say yes, then it says attached public
And I don't
report.
know.
Okay, so, yeah, that's.
Because the buyer's
Listing
agent worked
agents
with that
have fault
buyer,
as
not
well.
the listing agent and the buyer.
It's not like they were strangers, you just know them.
Yeah, and the buyer's agent's a little bit at fault too, because he should know the process that there should have been.
He should have advised that, hey, we don't have the public report, you should go look for that.
Yeah.
So,
And originally, like, go 2020. Once he said 2020 on the, agent provide brokers and the public.
Yeah,
sector,
because
so
the seller who
And the
now
seller's at no fault.
for this buyer said he had a public report.
So really, the original.
I would argue
He did
that.
what he was supposed to do.
Yeah.
2060.
No, who were the four people?
The listing.
All right,
agent,
so we're going?
buyer, and seller.
not what the seller did.
Okay.
Buy,
So he was- he's
the
not
seller's
up there.
agent, that should have been.
Because the seller is
Make the
not
seller
the
right.
original guy.
Yeah, I think both.
But that seller
Both
had,
agents are.
but the
seller
pass it
had-
on,
he had-
so is he at fault?
Buyer's agent's at fault for not
Well,
making sure the public report was included.
Maybe he didn't know who to provide it. Maybe he would want the seller's like the.
Check the
Is it
Wait a minute,
$150
but really the
if he
seller's
got it,
agent-
it was just like a big giant package.
Because he didn't add it,
One,
makes it either nefarious
how
or
it was
stupid
advertising, he
not
didn't
doing
really
it.
realize what was going down.
I think it's more on the buyers and the buyer's
He didn't
agent.
realize that maybe the listing agent should have.
The buyer's agent should have requested the seller's agent to attach it.
Give that information from him.
Yeah, I think there's more blame on the buyer's agent than the seller's agent. It's his job to protect his client.
Yeah, so that listing agent.
Really, I
should
mean,
have
he's
that
supposed to be
information.
professional, they hired a realtor to be a professional and to cover harassment and everything, it sounds to me like the buyer's agent.
And both of their brokers then should have.
It's his job to make sure that everything's
Yeah.
completed. I mean, that's the way I do business, I make sure I don't miss anything for my
Yeah,
clients.
I'm
It's my
thinking more
fault.
along that line now.
But you can say, well, the buyer, he built houses, he should have known better. No responsibility for the listing agent? The wild card is being really asked the question.
Other than being lazy.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Take about 2 more minutes, let's wrap it up.
Dax, is there a
But the
punishment
answer
for
to that
being
question
lazy?
is left looking at public
From
report. If not,
from a,
no
legal-
matter-
You lose clients.
Yeah.
You lose clients.
Yeah, I don't know, that's tough.
Yeah, let's look at the public
I would say the
report.
buyer's agent.
Yeah, let's find
So I
out.
think it's-
Let's look into it.
I think he's more responsible than the seller's agent. What do you
So
think?
They all maybe.
Well, the buyer's
I think
agent
it's
is
50.
supposed to represent the
I
buyer,
think it's 50-50.
and it sounds like you dropped the ball.
That's what we gotta do, is we gotta come up with a percentage.
Me too, that's the way I do.
It's not the agent's responsibility to public
Get
report.
the buyer and the seller out of there entirely.
They should have made, they should have put it back to the seller.
But the agent should make sure that his
Because they
buyer
hired some.
got the public report, he should have known that there was one required. It's in a subdivision, he said it could.
Alright, you guys got it? Make a decision.
I'm
It's not rocket science.
Yeah, we're somewhere in there. What do you think?
25, 25, 25, 25.
No, I just heard the punt.
Nah, we can't do that, we can't go.
That was a punt of all punts.
That was, we ran out of time, let's just do this.
30.
20 on who?
I'd say 50 on buyer's agent, that's what I
If you guys are you guys split? Do you not have a consensus?
No, I think we're 20 on
You guys are the Jody Arias jury?
Can we get Robert Mueller?
I can actually split you. I can split you if you want. You can do your own.
We'll see what they come up with.
All right, well, let me start here while you guys mess around. What'd you come up with?
Okay, well, we said 50-50, listing agent, buyer agent.
You didn't give the buyer or the seller anything? Wow. Nice. I'm glad that you weren't on my jury. What do you got?
We went, let's just go, we went 60% on the buyer,
On the buyer? Okay.
and then 20 and 20 on both agents. But we're kind of
You had a
questionable
different
on-
analysis. What did you have? I heard 50?
I would put 50 on the buyer's agent, I would put maybe 25, listing agent buyer, listing agent and the buyer. I think the buyer's agent is at fault because they didn't do due diligence.
Okay, I'll jump into those in a second. What did you do? What did you come up with?
I don't think the seller should get off. That's why
Finally,
I said
somebody
25,
with-
25.
Oh, you're the one that wanted 25s across the board?
Yeah,
Yeah, I think that.
it's everybody's responsibility.
I think option 4 is better.
You like option
Because
4?
the seller had
That was our
it.
plan B.
Okay.
I mean, it's.
Well, let's do this first. Okay.
Everybody's got their piece.
Well, actually, this is not uncommon, and what's really interesting is when I teach this to a room of 200 people and we have 20 juries, not that I'll get all 20 juries' numbers up there, it's never the same. Never even close. People have different opinions like crazy. But let's dive in. 50% of the buyer's attorney. What was your big issue with what the buyer's attorney did? I'm sorry, buyer's agent did.
The buyer's agent is supposed to represent the buyer, and that's what they're paying them for. That's, to me, that's the gig. I mean, that's why we're the agent.
Where did the buyer's agent fall down, though? What could have the buyer's agent done better?
They should have gotten the public report. They should have known somehow, and if they didn't know, they should have found out to know to contact the listing agent guy.
Okay. Is that your thoughts too?
Yeah, tell the buyer, hey, I don't know, we gotta research this.
Where did that's okay? I'm glad that's what came up.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this: when you wake up in the morning and you put on your real estate agent hat or your shirt or your badge or whatever, does that come with the duty to investigate things for your clients?
Yeah.
Does that give an automatic duty to do that?
Yeah.
How many people say yes? How many people say no? How many people don't want to vote or just are going to go half-assed? You should see that. Her arm was like going like this.
Look at the left people.
All right, the answer is actually no. You do not carry with your responsibility as a licensee a duty to investigate, per se, with two huge exceptions. Number one is you can create a duty to investigate by doing what? Anyone?
Voluntary.
Wait.
I volunteer to do it.
Okay.
By saying, I will go find this out. So remember they had that conversation when they're walking the lot. Can anything happen here? Okay, and the agent said, you go investigate it. But the agent could have said, I'll find out. If the agent says, I'm going to find out, now we've created a duty to investigate. The other way a duty to investigate comes up is if there's a certain color flag waving in your face. What color? A red flag, right? If something alerts you that there could be an issue. All right, so say for instance, a week after they go under contract, the agent's out there driving around with another client to look at a different lot, but drives by this lot and sees the tractor out there. Is that a flag? Is that a red flag? Yeah, now we got a duty to do something. At a minimum, we got a duty to alert our clients, right? But you don't have an inherent duty to actually investigate. And in fact, there's a saying, one of my favorite sayings in real estate, that you should always be the source of the source, but never what?
The source.
The source. That's a saying that we as lawyers use. Be the source of the source, but not the source. Well, what does that kind of mean? That means, in a perfect world, from a litigation defense standpoint, in a perfect world, you're the traffic cop directing them, but you're not taking them anywhere. Okay, so in the perfect world, in this situation, the agent is saying, you need to go here, there, or there to go find that out. All right? Now, why do we, as licensees, sometimes take it upon ourselves to go do things for our clients? Because we feel like that's our job. And we also don't want them to think that we're not helping them there. We want them to hire us for a reason. So I get it. It's a tough dilemma for you all. As a lawyer, I can stand up here and say, you be the source, and never the source, and that's the best way to stay out of my office. Right? But as somebody that wants to have relationships and build businesses, that's a little more challenging. But once you start stepping your toe and things go sideways, the number one lawsuit I see in this regard is when the agent takes it upon themselves to investigate schools and school districts. Because somebody will say, I want to make sure this house is going to be in this school district that has A ratings or something like that, or offers this kind of program, or blah, blah, blah. The agent says, oh, I'll find that out for you. I can't tell you how many lawsuits I've had over the last 20 years where the agent goes and thinks they found out the right information, but guess what? They didn't.
Regardless of what the other agent put in the listing.
Or just in general, it could be not even be in the listing. It could be like, I want to be in the school in a district that has blah, blah, blah. Happens all the time. Okay? Now, where did the agent, the buyer's agent, fall down here in a more practical way? Meaning it could have protected themselves.
See, for me, the red flag, even though he said, I would have said the same thing, check it out. But the red flag is, this is a real big deal here. They're buying this is a real big deal to them. So I would have looked into it, not necessarily telling them I was looking into it, maybe found out, wait, we don't have a public report. I wouldn't have stopped there.
Well, let me tell you about the public report real quick, just so you know what the defense is to that. Why nobody got it. Because let's not forget, the buyer didn't get it either. The buyer didn't jump up and down and say, I need the public report. And the buyer's a spec home builder. You know why the buyer didn't ask for the public report? Because the buyer had done 50 vacant land transactions and never once seen a public report attached to vacant land spuds. The real estate agent, both agents who had done hundreds of vacant land transactions, had never seen a public report attached to the vacant land spuds. What does that tell us about the vacant land spuds in that particular requirement?
They don't think it's important.
Nobody does it. So we've created an expectation in our document that nobody follows. Right? I don't know, have you ever seen a public report attached to a vacant land spuds? Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, I will tell you that our expert in that case, you have to hire an expert. You have to hire an expert in these cases to say the agent fell below the standard of care or met the standard of care. Our expert is was the designated broker for HomeSmart, Trudy Moore. Trudy has never seen it, ever attached. So that doesn't mean that it was a good thing, because it was written on there and they jumped up and down, being the plaintiff, saying it was there, and nobody went and got it. I'll also tell you what was also very, very interesting is that is unusual as heck for a public report to have that kind of disclosure in it. I don't know if any of you have ever read a public report, but really what they're there for is just to tell the world that we've got infrastructure. That's it. It's not a disclosure document. So it's just really odd and unusual. But so that's just so you know, that's how we defended that issue. I'm not suggesting it was perfect, it was easy, but that's how we defended it.
I have a question. On the public report, I thought it was to detail and let you know what was in so many miles, maybe, 5 miles around what's actually there.
No, let's tell you that you got streets and roads and sewer.
Super basic, so nobody ever looks at it, because it's just like,
it's not a disclosure thing. It's just saying you've met the minimum requirements in order to do a subdivision. That's all it's saying.
And if it's new, then nobody really knows.
Right.
They say the land.
So let me get back to what is a very, very major point. Matter of fact, this is probably the number one thing that you should take away from this class today, because it's actually the number one way to stay out of my office. And I was saying this a little bit earlier. Where did the agent fall down in terms of not protecting themselves in this matter? What could have the agent done better besides the public report? Buyer's agent. I'm talking about buyer's agent right now. Remember what conversation I said is the really super important conversation?
It's something in writing.
I'm sorry?
It's something in writing.
Right. We have an incredibly important conversation. What should that agent done?
Summarized it.
Should have confirmed it. It is the number one failing of real estate licensees in Arizona. It's the number one thing that happens that gets real estate licensees sued, because they don't document important conversations. And this was a super important conversation, right? The buyer said, I have a concern. I want to know some information. And the agent said that the decision was made that the buyer was going to be the one to investigate it. That is the mother of all conversations to put in writing, right? You follow up in an email. You like the lot, you're going to put in an offer. You have some concerns about what can happen with the state land, you're going to investigate it. He does that. Is he in our office? Never gets sued. Those are the conversations that I see all the time that aren't documented. Let me tell you, I'll give you another example. And this is one of my favorite cases I ever did. Real estate licensee is driving in a car with a client. Client's actually driving because he brought his son, his young son, who's still young enough to be in a car seat. And they start having a conversation. It goes something like this. The buyer in during this one subdivision, he says, it's really important for me to be able to buy a house in which I can put a basketball hoop in the front yard. Because little Johnny, I know he's not very old and I don't look very athletic, but I see little Johnny in our family room playing on our Nerf hoop, and I think if I get a house and I can put a basketball hoop in the front yard, and I work with him and I train him and I practice him, someday he can play in the NBA and make millions of dollars. It's a true story. This is a real life lawsuit. And at that point in time, as they're driving through the neighborhood, there's basketball hoops up in various houses. There's two versions of what the agent said. According to this potential buyer, the agent said there's basketball hoops everywhere. Of course you can put up a hoop. According to the agent, she said, there's basketball hoops everywhere, but you may want to check the what? The CCNRs to make sure you can still do that. Okay, buys a house in the neighborhood, puts up a basketball hoop, gets a letter from the property management company saying you can't put up hoops, those are all grandfathered in. So he sues the real estate licensee. Now the reason this is one of my favorite stories ever, because it doesn't sound all that glamorous, is when you sue somebody, you have to ask for money. What money was he asking for?
$20 million.
Yeah, he was asking for lost earnings of little Johnny's future NBA basketball career.
Oh my God, come on.
Swear. That's why I love that story. Okay. Now, silly as that sounds, as a lawsuit, what happened there? Where did the agent fall down so she could avoid going to real estate jail? Yeah, if she just documented in an email or text saying something to the event, in fact, hey, you like that house, we're going to put an offer in, you want to make sure you're going to verify that you can put a basketball hoop up. She sends that email, she's not in my office. Now, why doesn't she send that email? Why didn't she send it? Is she a bad agent?
No, it's silly. It's a basketball hoop.
Because she didn't even think about it. Why doesn't she think about it?
She made an assumption.
She made an assumption that they were on the same
Okay,
page.
because there were other ones around.
No, that's not true. She made an assumption that they were on the same page, that he understood what she said. She said, you need to go investigate this. She didn't think in a million years that he'd come back and say a different story. Why did the guy walk in the lot not put his in writing? Hey, you're going to go find out what can happen with the state land. Why did he do that? Because he made an assumption that they were on the same page, and they were also friends, and they'd done 10 deals together. Right? But the reality is, anytime you're sitting and having a conversation with your client, and there is a discussion about something that's important to them, but something has to be done to figure that out, those are the mother of all conversations that you need to be putting in writing. And I'll bet you've either had a transaction, you were thinking back right now going, wow, I didn't put that in writing. Or sometime in the future, you'll be sitting somewhere with a client and a conversation come up and go ding, 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 this is what Dax is talking about. Spend 30 seconds and put it in writing. Okay? Let me tell you another story. If you're going to put it in writing, let's do it in a way that's effective enough to help me. Alright? Do you like my stories? Aren't these stories just awesome?
You want to know how it ended?
I will tell you how it ended. We got 96 minutes.
It's amazing we're talking about this with the text that I just got.
Okay, there you go.
Based on exactly what you're talking about.
I love it. All right, so this story is from early in my law career because it involves fax machines.
It's like happy hour.
You probably don't even know what a fax machine is, do you?
Yeah, the roll paper.
They go. Okay. All right. So, a real estate agent is actually. Was he a listing agent? You haven't told this story in a while. This is a really good story. We were the listing agent. Okay. So, an investor went and bought 2 parcels of land from a foreclosure out in New River. Now, I was asked, what of the 2 words from the name of that town sticks out to you? New River? Yeah, which of the two words is more important?
River.
River. What does it imply?
Flood.
Floods, floodplains, right? Floodways. They never call it new dirt, did they? Okay. Anyways, so this investor goes and buys these 2 lots from a foreclosure, goes out and finds this agent out in the New River area to list it. Now, because the investor bought it through foreclosure, does the investor know anything about the lot? No, not at all. But this agent had been out there for long enough to understand that we do live in New River, and there's certain things that we need to find out. Now, this is also old enough to where how you go find out this information changes a lot today in technology. But anyways, he knows that they got to go down to the flood control district, and they got to find out if this thing's in a floodway or a floodplain or anything like that. And so what you did in the old days is you would send in this request for information, you'd mail it in. And then a few weeks later, you get back information saying whether or not it's in the floodway, floodplain, things of that nature. So they do that, they send it in, and they also list the lots. While they're waiting for the information to come back from the flood control district, he can come to buy. Young couple, gonna buy a lot, build a house, okay? And so they go under contract. While we're under contract, here comes in the information from flood control. And it says that it's not in a floodplain or a floodway right now, but it's part of a study in which it could be reclassified. Is that important information?
Yeah,
Is that material information? Does it need to be disclosed? How does it need to be disclosed?
In writing.
Yeah, you guys, R4-2011-01D, you have to disclose anything that materially or adversely affects consideration to be paid for property in writing. Okay. That basically means if there's something important, we disclose in writing. Well, this information clearly should have been disclosed in writing. So they go and they buy their lot, and when they go to build 6 months later, they find out what? The study came back and it's in a flood way, which is the worst of the two. It basically means you can't build a house without putting it on stilts and things like that, okay? So they're upset. So they file a lawsuit. They file a lawsuit against their agent, and they file a lawsuit against the listing agent, and they file a lawsuit against the seller because they say this was never disclosed. I've got the listing agent. I've got the guy that filled out the flood control district report in requesting information. And he comes in my office, I'll never forget this. He was in such a good mood. And nobody comes to my office in a good mood. Why would you be? Like the stupidest question I ask on a daily basis when I open up my conference room is, hey, how are you doing today? How are they doing? That's the term I use, shitty. Right. You don't go see a lawyer, at least my type of lawyer, for good news, right? But anyways, he comes in, he's real happy. And I say, why are you so happy? He's like, I'm not going to be here very long. I'm like, well, why do you say that? He's like, because I disclosed that report. I'm like, you did? He's like, yeah. And I said, you disclosed it in writing? Can you prove it? He goes, yeah, absolutely. I faxed it over to him. I said, well, do you have the fax confirmation and cover sheet and all that stuff? He's like, yeah, I got it. He's very good move. So he thumbs through his file and he pulls out and he slides over to me his fax cover sheet. And sure enough,
Faded.
No, sure enough. No. Sure enough, he did fax it. And he faxed it to the other agent, and it's date stamped at the top and all that stuff. But as you go down and you're looking at it, there's a remark section, right? There's a section that tells the world what is in this fax, right? And in this remark section, it doesn't say enclosed is the flood control district report. It doesn't say FCD report. It doesn't say anything. It says 3 magic words. Here you go. I said, this says here you go. He said, yeah. He still smiles. I said, this says here you go. He's like, yeah. Why does it say here you go? He said, well, because I got the report. I knew it was important, so I picked up the phone. I called the other agent. I said, I got this flood control district report, and I'll fax it right over. So I did. Here you go. And then so I at the time, my office was on like the 10th floor or 15th floor of one of the high rises down in Phoenix, and we had this unbelievable view, and we had all this fancy furniture and all this stuff. And I said, do you like that view? And he's like, yeah. I said, is it beautiful? Yeah. You think this is expensive space? Yeah. I said, it's paid for by here you go. I didn't say that.
Yes, you did.
No, I didn't. I thought it though. I said, that's not going to work. He's like, what do you mean? I said, the other agent is never going to say that you had attached the flood control district report to that fax. Why wouldn't he say that? Because if he says it, guess what? He loses. He's like, no, he's not going to do that. What did the other agent say?
All you got was a cover.
That wasn't what was.
All you got was a cover.
Yeah. So anyways, the point of that story is, here you go isn't a sufficient writing. It's enclosed as this. You're going to do that. We agreed this is important to you. Okay? Sounds basic, but I'm telling you, there's like 2 or 3 rules that you can follow in your practice, and you won't be in my office. What's your text say?
Unbelievable.
Good.
That we're, so I took a listing agreement over to a client yesterday, waiting for her to sign it, and told her I wanted it through April. She comes back and says, that's too long, I'll give it to you until December 31st. And I said, all right, I'll take it as long as you agree that if I'm meeting expectations, you'll extend it till April. So she goes, yeah, I will. I said, and right when you said that, I said, let's go ahead and define what those expectations are and put them in writing.
There you go.
Right when you said that, it was like
There we
perfect
go.
timing.
Right.
Otherwise, you know what? I probably would have just said, yeah, okay.
Yeah. No, you got it. All right. So I spent a lot of time on that, but the buyer's agent could have confirmed that conversation. If the buyer's agent confirms that conversation, we're probably not sitting here, right? If the buyer's agent took the time, and you guys live in the best time ever to be in this industry. I mean, 20 years ago, we all didn't have all these devices. Now we all live on a device that you can sit in a classroom and confirm a conversation in 20 seconds and be rude as hell. No, I'm kidding.
And not miss what you're saying.
You're doing your homework.
All right.
So I have a question. So
Yeah.
when we're sending an email, I guess we still keep track of our attachments, because a lot of people just now say see attached.
I wouldn't. Yeah, don't do that. Say don't just say that's a perfect example. Say attached is blah 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 blah. Spend the extra 4 seconds to describe what's in the attachment. Okay. Some people also say, well, yeah. Sometimes I'll say this too. If it's super important, do one of 2 things: ask them a question in it, or send it to them multiple times, confirming that they got it. Why? Because the other thing is I never got that email. So,
Okay, I always ask them acknowledge receipt.
yeah. Okay.
Hold it.
All right. Let's keep going. So we talked about the buyer's agent, but what about the listing agent? Who gave 50? Which one's 50-50? Okay. What did the listing agent do wrong? What was your?
He's the expert.
Yeah.
Should have known.
If you're gonna hold let me back up.
Or
Are you
the
allowed to
results
hold
of it.
yourself out as an expert? I mean, is there any rule that says you can't?
Say whatever you want.
I mean, would Judy Lowe come and bust you if she saw a flyer that said that you're the expert in wherever, Briarwood? Ooh, no. Unless I guess technically, if you said you're the expert in a certain subdivision and you only been practicing real estate for 1 day, that probably could get you in trouble, because that would be a false statement, because you can't be the expert in anything that you've only been for a day. But if you want to hold yourself out as an expert, you can, for sure. The question is, should you? One. And the other question is, that's the only question. Why shouldn't you? Anybody?
Well, because if you're not, you're going to get your...
Yeah, you've created a higher standard of care for yourself. You guys do what you want. Why do you do it? You do it for marketing, right? You do it to get clients, because you want to tell the world, hey, I'm a better agent in this area than anybody else, hire me. Okay, I get it. If you're going to be marketing that way, if that's going to be your strategy, well then you darn well better be what? An expert. And is it even possible that an expert in a subdivision wouldn't know about the construction of a sewer treatment facility on the other side of the fence?
Having already sold several of those lots.
Well, I don't care how many he sold. He said he's the expert.
Yeah.
So now he's saying he's the expert, yet he doesn't know about a major construction project. Is that a problem? Yeah, it could be a big problem.
Question.
Yes.
I think there's a lot of gray area in there, because if he says he's an expert, what if he lives in that area? He's an expert on his piece of property. Doesn't mean he's an expert on...
Well, that's the other reason why you take your license in your own
I'm not
hands.
trying to nitpick, I'm just...
Well, no, but I don't disagree with you. I personally, I would never put expert or specialist if I was an agent, because I've seen what happens. I see that then you get destroyed at trial, because if you're an expert, you darn well should have known everything. If you're going to do it, fine, but then you better make sure you are staying on top of whatever subdivision you're saying you're the specialist by going to HOA meetings. By making sure you're getting all the flyers and whatever, the newsletters. Yes, sir.
What about using the word I specialize in this area?
It's the same thing.
Much broader, or is it under the same...
It's probably, splitting hairs. Again, I'm not telling you not to do it. I'm just saying if you're gonna do it, be aware that you've created a higher standard of care for yourself. That means you better stay on top of whatever area you're saying that you're really good at. Okay? And that's why I do think that the buyer's agent was gonna have some real problems here. That's why I think this is a good number.
So the buyer's agent was the one who was marketing himself as the specialist.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I said that wrong. The listing agent. You're right. The listing agent's the one that was marketing themselves as a specialist. I'm really surprised. Okay, so only one person gave the seller. Nobody had heartburn with the idea that the seller had a public report that they signed and said they read it and didn't disclose anything.
I don't.
I know.
It didn't say that they had to produce it.
Well, they said they hadn't read it, but they signed a piece of paper that said they did read it.
Was there anywhere where it said that they had to divulge that?
Well, if they knew it, I think we would all agree to this, right? Regardless of what the public report said, if they were aware, whether from the public report or somebody else, that this was going to happen, don't you think they would have had to disclose that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. Yes, sir.
John Dyer tells us that our job, and I know Johnny can back me up on this, our job is to produce perfect paperwork. So the buyer's agent didn't produce perfect paperwork for his client by not making sure that the public report.
I don't disagree. I mean, it's a problem, and it's actually a problem with our documents, and that's not to be critical of AAR. They just created an expectation that no one follows.
Right.
You know. All right. So, any questions on anything we've gone over? You want to know what happened?
Yeah.
Okay, so they wanted $1 million, right? That's what I said. Okay, we did $1 million. That's what they said. They said that they had an expert that came in and testified this is the value of their house had gone
Walmart
down $1 million.
got it.
All right. How many people think that they got $1 million? How many people think they got at least 750? 500?
I have no clue.
250?
I have no clue.
That's it.
250?
I'll go for 5.
Okay. How many people think I would talk about a case that I lost? They got
I forget who you
0.
represented.
I was representing the buyer's agent. They got 0. They got nothing.
It's all their
Okay.
fault.
No, they didn't even get there. So I kind of tricked you a little bit. As a lawyer, I will do that from time to time.
No.
I asked you to do a default allocation, but in real life, you don't get to default allocation until you do something else. Juries have to assess 4 things: whether or not there was a duty, whether or not that duty was breached, and did it cause harm. See, the plaintiff has to get all 4 of those. If the plaintiff misses on 1, I win. They get nothing. You don't even go to the default allocations. All right. We talked a lot about what happened here in terms of who didn't get what, who didn't disclose what. But we didn't focus on something that was super, super important in this case. It was the timing of when this house was finished. This house finished in 2007. Anybody know what happened in 2007? Our economy crashed. Okay. Anybody practice real estate in 2007? Yeah. So, in 2007, a lot of short sales, a lot of foreclosures.
You want to see the scars?
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, and what did this guy do for a living?
Home builder.
Yeah, how were home builders doing in 2007?
So great.
Right, so he basically ended up having to short sell his house. And when you do a short sell, and fortunately it doesn't look like a lot of you had to do that, but back in the day when you had to do short sales, you would have to send a hardship letter to your lender saying, I can't afford these payments anymore. I want you to take less than I owe and get rid of this. And in your hardship letter, you have to say why you have a hardship. Well, what does he put in his hardship? I'm a builder and I'm not building. Which means what? He's going to lose this property no matter what because he can't pay his loan. In addition, Arizona is what we call an anti-deficiency state. An anti-deficiency state means if you have the right house and the right loan, the only collateral for the loan is the house itself. Meaning his lender can't come after him for any difference between what the actual short sale is and what is owed. So, remember, he said he spent $2 million, he ends up short selling it for about $1 million, and that's where we really got the $1 million spread. And I had him on the stand, and I said, all right, help me out here. You were a builder and you weren't going to be able to build houses, right? So you can't make your payments, right? So even if that waste treatment facility wasn't there, you were not going to be able to stay in this house, correct? Right. And at the same time, you got to sell it short, right? Right. and you didn't have to pay the bank back that money, right, and you didn't have to pay any taxes, right. All right, so if this jury gives you $1 million, you give it to the bank. What do you think he said?
The hush fell on the ground.
He had to say no, right? But who really got harmed here? Let's assume that the waste treatment facility did decrease the value of this house. Then that means the bank didn't get as much money as they probably would have got from the short sale. Because there was no doubt that most of the decreased value in this house was because the economy crashed. And there's no doubt that the house did decrease in value because of the waste treatment facility. But the bank is the one that got shafted here by this, not him. So the jury didn't see any harm. So they couldn't satisfy that element. So they got 0. Jury was only out for 15 minutes.
Wow.
The quickest verdict I ever got. It was so quick. Typically when you give a case to the jury, the clerk will ask for your phone, because you got to stay within 15 minutes of the courthouse. So we give our phone numbers. We're walking out to our car. I'm getting in my car, and my phone's already blowing up that the jury was back. Now, that doesn't mean that the agents did a good job here. It just means they got lucky. How did they get lucky? Because the economy crashed. Because if the economy doesn't crash, there's a problem here. But that economy crashing, that's why we won that case.
So Dax, what if the economy didn't crash?
Yeah.
Then we'd probably lose. How do I think it would have split out?
Yeah, what's your...
I do think the listing agent would have had probably more liability than the buyer's agent, because it was pretty credible to argue that that the public report being attached to the spuds was kind of a red herring, because no one did that. I mean, no one did it. I mean, and whether our document says it or not, nobody got in there and testified. And the buyer himself couldn't say anything, but the buyer had done tons of transactions and had never gotten one. So I think that was a little bit of a red herring. But the listing agent couldn't get around the idea that they held themselves out as an expert or a specialist in the area, but didn't know about it. I think that would have hurt them. I think the buyer would have gotten some fault, and I do think the seller would have got some fault, mainly because I would have hammered him.
What about the buyer's agent, who you represented?
He was a good witness. They liked him a lot. He had a lot of integrity. Matter of fact, he was beating himself up quite a bit about not going to get the public report, even though he'd never got one before, because it was just unfortunate that this information was there. This counts. I mean, this sounds silly, but this counts. He was a really good looking guy. He's from New Zealand, so he had a really cool accent. I stacked the jury with women.
Yeah.
I'm not kidding you. This stuff counts. And so I don't know. I mean, I think he probably got tagged a little bit. And the buyer wasn't very likable, and the buyers appeared greedy, obviously.
So in the end, everybody won except for the buyer.
Yeah, all the defendants got off.
But they all won, because the listing agent got a commission, the buyer's agent got a commission, the seller got the...
Well, here's the other crazy thing: is we
price of the house.
offered $100,000 to settle the case,
Wow.
and they didn't take it. Now you say, well, why did you offer $100,000 when you cleaned their clock? Well, the fact pattern on its face is awful. I mean, every juror can sympathize or empathize with how horrible it would be to build your dream house and then have a waste treatment. And I mean, sure. I mean, there was all kinds of evidence that they had a real big problem with this waste treatment facility for the first year it was up. They couldn't control the smell, and it was just awful. Matter of fact, when they were trying to do the short sale, agents would come in and they would send emails back to the now new listing agent saying, the house is beautiful, but it smells like shit. I mean, literally, that was read. I had to look at these freaking blown up emails for 5 days at trial, right? So the fact pattern on his face was just bad, and then it's expensive, right? We don't get our attorney's fees back. That's one of the things that's interesting about being a real estate licensee, and for me defending real estate agents, is the winning party between you and a buyer in a lawsuit does not get their attorney's fees. So even though we won, we don't get to go back to them and say, give us all of our attorney's fees. So when you have a case that on its face has some potential issues on it, and it's going to take, which it did, almost $200,000 to take it to trial, and you're not going to recover any of that, $100,000 looks reasonable. But they were greedy, and they thought they were going to hit a home run, so they didn't take it. And that was early on, too.
So they had to pay your attorney's fees, too?
It did not. Nobody gets their attorney's fees in your cases. Now, the good news for you guys is you have right? So other than a deductible, the insurance company pays it.
So I have a question if I can.
Sure.
Are we out of time?
We got 5 minutes.
So how much do you see, and can you explain to us how dual representation and fiduciary work? And do you
Okay,
see-
well that's an
do you see
interesting
cases-
question.
Do you see cases like that?
I do. I'm not a big fan of dual agency.
I don't think it's possible, but.
Well, yeah, and I'll say I agree with you on that in a second. I don't have a problem with dual agency, one brokerage with 2 different agents. My problem is dual agency, one brokerage, one agent. Because I think you hit on the head, the fiduciary duty aspect of it. It's almost impossible. But my biggest complaint about it, from a practical standpoint, is I think when you're a dual agent, you've removed from the representation the one thing that they truly hired you for. The one thing somebody hires you for, if you're a seller, they're hiring you to get the most money possible. And if you're a buyer, to pay the least amount of money possible. Well now, since you've been removed as an advocate on price, you can't do that. So as a very practical matter, it doesn't make any sense to me. But just even from a fiduciary and carrying out your duties, it doesn't make any sense to me. From a legal matter, why I don't like it is you've removed an allocation of fault, haven't you? Meaning, in this case, if I'm wearing both hats, then potentially 50%, if this jury was right, 50% is gone. All right, so you've reduced me being able to point a finger at somebody else. Because that's what happened. We go in the trial, I point a finger at the other agent, said the other agent, first thing we say is nobody did anything wrong, buyers are crazy, but if anybody did anything wrong, it's the other agent, right? So, any other questions? Well, I really appreciate you guys hanging in there for a small little class, but hopefully it was fun.
That was great.
All right, thanks, everybody.
It's fine. Thanks,
Hey, Mike, did you sign it?
Max.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm gonna go talk to her too.
Big time builder. Got a lot of deals.
Yeah.